Hello, and welcome back to the Stiff Upper Lip podcast. I am Tom, and I'm joined by three people right here, three marvelous individuals, because we've got a full house, baby! First time, or maybe second time this year. Crazy! To my Discord windows right is Mr. Ed Wilkins. Ed, how are you, first of all?
I'm jolly good, thank you, Tom. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm ready to talk ball. To my under is Mr. Samuel Longden. Sam, how are you?
I think I'm the John Stamos of this full house.
And
Voice charm.
and directly opposite me, not only in takes but also in the windows. Max, how are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I just took a painkiller for my wisdom teeth pain. I've been growing them out specifically so that I can offer more wisdom on this podcast.
That was the most Max thing you could have possibly said. Respect. Are you
I should have harvested all my wisdom on that AJ Brown take.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, it's fine. The more it throbs, the more takes I can deliver with devastating accuracy.
Well, there you go. We have a couple games that we want to talk about, but we're going to save those for after the segment because we've got a sort of hard out of 8:30 for Mr. Ed Wilkins. So we're going to hit our segment this time around, first time, early doors, and that is at the midway point of the NFL, give or take a 3-week buffer period. It is the Stiff Upper Lip Midseason Awards, baby. Yeah! MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, and Coach of the Year. And we're going to hopefully have a team's worth of awards. And I'm going to listen to these three stooges giving their best approach of who they think is valuable for an award this year, and then I'm going to be the one that makes the decisions, baby, because it's all about me. It's all about me, baby. Yeah, no, it's not. It's the Stiff Upper Lip podcast team or awards show, I guess. And
Not to brown nose you, Tom, but I would like to confirm that it is indeed all about you.
You're brown nosing me. Let's move it into the awards.
I hope that will be reflected in the awards section.
Okay, lovely. Well, it's good to have everyone here because it wouldn't feel appropriate to be crowning our awards at the mid-season point without inputs from all of you. But first of all, welcome back, Ed. Your hot butt rankings last week were heavily debated.
Corruption caused.
Yes. Do you still feel strongly about any of those that you maybe put on the hot seat just to get your dazzling takes a week late?
To be clear, I mean Bob Salah was right on the money. And who else did I say? Shanahan. I didn't realize he'd signed an extension in the off season, so I'll take the L on that one. But I'm still very, very, very convinced that Salah will not survive this year.
Okay. Well,
are you familiar with the term stool pigeon?
No, not in not in this sense.
I'm familiar with both those words.
Yeah.
So
I
the
like
mafia.
to think in my mind I could concoct an idea of what it could be.
So the mafia would send a sort of low-ranking person to court in place of the Don, as it were, and they would plead guilty to a minor crime to deflect suspicion from the Don, and would take a minor prison sentence, and in so doing would be a stool pigeon. Bob Salah
Are you saying Bob
the Zach
Salah
Wilson thing
is the Mongol emissary of Aaron Rodgers' Kublai Khan?
I'm not sure.
I don't know that that's entirely that we've. God, I'm so happy when these pop up. It's another perfect Ed Wilkins analogy, wherein it might not be right, but he believes it with such conviction and has convinced himself of the fact that it's true over the course of like 15 years.
You know,
Yeah, I've been ruminating my Bob Salah opinions for
Oh, no, the
15
stool
years
pigeon,
for
though.
this point. Oh no, that is the definition of a stool pigeon.
I think you'll find. I've researched this several times.
including all of them in the last 3.5 minutes, by any chance.
No, my life is quite empty, and I was having an argument with my dad.
Go on. That was it.
So it's basically because people used to tie pigeons to stools, so they would like flap about loads for some kind of hunting purpose.
You've gotten confused there because Ed spends all his day thinking about stool pigeons, whereas you spend your whole day dealing with pigeon stools. Let's move on.
Oh my god. Very nice. Alright, we have obviously all of the major award categories. I think that we will hit on, let's just see here, we've got 7 awards. Let's do the math here. I reckon we'll hit on 7 of these awards come the end of the year, baby. I think we're gonna get it right on the money as a collective. But
7 of 7.
7 of 7.
Damn. But that means that it's entirely up to you.
Well,
Yeah.
it's almost all up to me. But
Well, I mean, if it was going to happen, we'd make a convincing argument, and then you'd believe it, and it'd be real. So
yeah, that's what I mean.
that's why you wouldn't pick the correct answer.
Just because I'm the one that's going to be picking out the gem in a sea of sweet corn, shall we say? That doesn't mean that it's not a collaborative effort, and I think that we should begin. I think we maybe save the most important, the crown jewel, till last, and I think that we start
Special teams coach of the year.
with coach of the year. Not special teams coach of the year, just regular NFL head coach of the year. And I'm going to start with Edward Elliott Wilkins. Ed, who is your coach of the year?
My full Sunday name was on display. Yeah, it's D'Amico Ryans, and I say that with no sort of irony, and especially given the sort of hot butt rankings we did last week, and I said he was safe as houses. How many wins did we think this Texans team was going to get before the start of the year? Talent
As many as
poor,
they have now.
poorly coached. Exactly. These were the criticisms. Talent poor, poorly coached. They were absent in big games. They have a sort of narrative of being sellers. D'Amico Ryans comes in and changes the whole culture of the club from the ground up. A defense without big names. They just pulled off a win against the Bengals. They stopped Joe Burrow on 5 consecutive possessions at the end of the game. There's not much more you can say about D'Amico Ryans other than no one is doing better with less in the NFL right now. And as a narrative-driven award, Coach of the Year, it has to be Ryans.
Yeah, it definitely could be with who won it last year? Brian Dable?
Yeah.
Another sort of scenario where he did quite a lot, evidently with so little, as is paying off here. It's a good first argument of the episode.
Recent winners also include Matt Nagy.
Yeah. It's maybe not the greatest of awards to win, because it does mean that you're either coaching a bad team well or you're set for the axe in the next couple of years. Sam, who would be your coach of the year candidate?
I think Kevin O'Connell. Obviously the Vikings have struggled with injury. They're 4-0 without Justin Jefferson. Obviously, having to rely and scrounge with Jordan Addison is hardly a terrible position to be in. But the O-line's not really been terribly healthy or been traded away. To a degree, I don't know whether maybe I'm crediting him with, like, Ed Donatel leaving and Brian Flores' defense being very fun and, kind of successful, which I'm sure he probably didn't have the biggest role in, but he's, they're a fun team to watch. They get results with at certain places not a great deal of talent, certainly on the defense, which I don't know whether it helps that they're rushing 6 guys so frequently that you can gloss over some of the coverage, shortcomings. But they're a fun team to watch. They're doing well under, they're doing well under not ideal circumstances, and those are the very few boxes that I want ticked for this award. Also, their next season will probably be absolutely terrible, and they'll burn the whole franchise to the ground.
Okay. Strong argument. I'm not sure whether or not Ed would agree with, especially the last bit.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm bitter in some way.
Okay. Max, do you have a Coach of the Year candidate prepared?
Yeah, I think I do. I feel like I've got the layup here. I think some honourable mentions I would give. Obviously, Mike McDaniel. I wanted to, after Sam said Kevin O'Connell, I wanted to look up if he's even in the odds at the moment, and he isn't. But to our early discussion, Bob Sala was 4th in Coach of the Year odds, so there's a bit of a disparity there. But I think the obvious choice is Dan Campbell of the Detroit Lions. People fucking love it. Like Ed said, it's a very narrative-driven award, and people love the Detroit Lions because they were so miserable and pathetic for so long, and they are a good team. Obviously they had that whipping at the hand of the Ravens, so I don't want to give them too much credit. But no, they're a really well coached team in general. I think they played. They've won in a lot of different kinds of ways. They've played above the level of their talent, and they are entertaining. And Dan Campbell is the kind of coach that you would run through a wall for. I think the Lions are likely, in my opinion, to end up with somewhere between 12 and 14 wins, probably 13 or 14 wins, and they're going to win the division, and that is alone is going to be enough to win it for Dan Campbell. So that's the boring answer. The mystery answer that floated into my mind, like the little triangle-shaped piece of paper in a Magic 8 Ball, and just a single piece of paper came to the top, and it just said on it, Shane Steichen. But I have not taken leave of my senses, so I didn't want to put that one forward.
Okay. So if you're going with Dan Campbell, I think you're absolutely spot on with, everybody loves this Detroit Lions team, especially with them being actually good for a change, for the first time in 53 years.
Yeah, they're actually good. They're not paper Lions, they're real.
Yeah, they're an actual good NFL franchise, and I think as well, Dan Campbell is one of those guys that's really endeared himself to the entire NFL in such a short space of time, with everybody thinking that he was just some chunder shoving meathead. But in terms of I think the other two guys as well, Ryans and O'Connell, they deserve a lot of credit, but I think you're absolutely correct about the Coach of the Year being so narrative driven that a good Detroit Lions team, and an actually good one, they are potentially heading for a 1 seed in the NFC, which is mental, could result in Dan Campbell getting the reward. And so I am going to go with Dan Campbell as the stiff upper lip Coach of the Year at this mid-season point. I'm sorry to D'Amico Ryans and Kevin O'Connell, but it's Dan Campbell all the way, knee biting and all.
Harsh but fair.
That's
Chunder shoving meathead is so bad, dude.
Okay. So we have our coach of the year. Now, do we want to do the rookie of the year? Sort of keep ascending. Okay. So, I think we can get out of defensive rookie of the year fairly unscathed without any arguments. So I'm gonna put forward that we do defensive rookie of the year first. Does anyone have a counter argument other than Jalen Carter to bring to the floor?
Yeah, Devin Witherspoon.
Those are the two that I would have
Yeah.
said, to be fair.
Would you like
Witherspoon's the
to?
only guy who gets close.
Would you like to give your argument, Ed, for Devin Witherspoon?
I think it comes down to him not being involved in the death of a teammate, perhaps ethically, but also I think that it comes down to my thesis of doing more with less. Like Witherspoon's played at nickelback, he's played in slot corner, he's played in, he's done a little bit of box safety, he's played outside, he's excelled at every position, shut down multiple wide receiver ones. Like didn't I? I can't remember exactly who it was. It Amon-Ra St. Brown where he held him to like 2 catches. Like Seattle are ascending and assembling a sort of second Legion of Boom with the pieces they have there, and he's a sort of key figure in it already.
I
Like
don't know if I'd go
sacks
that
are
far
a
as
very
second Legion of Boom.
well. I'm saying assembling. I'm not saying it's there. It could still fall apart. But Reek Woolen, the other guy, the
Yeah,
safety whose name I can't remember. Yeah, they just seem to have all of the pieces there to build something. But I think that gaudy numbers, except for if you're Trayvon Diggs and it's sort of a mirage, aren't really a thing for cornerbacks. So I think there's a sort of there's an indication to not put it on Witherspoon. But I think in terms of playing, just becoming a dependable presence, because you have to remember that Jalen Carter is a rotational piece on Philly's D line. Devin Witherspoon plays every snap.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. He's definitely grown a lot more in the year, especially I think maybe his first couple of games it felt a little like they were just trying to slightly bleed him in a little bit more. But 22 receptions allowed on 46 carries is 46 targets is it's pretty good going for a rookie just coming into the league. And it's not like the Seahawks haven't played anyone that's got elite wide receiver talent. Like he was matched up against Terry McLaurin and did a pretty good job of shrouding him all game really. So I think it's a good argument. For the sake, does anyone have anyone else, or does anyone want to have the honor of putting forward the Jalen Carter argument?
Yeah, to make the argument for Jalen Carter, I think we talked about Coach of the Year being a narrative-driven award, but the reality is they're all narrative-driven awards because the voters just basically watch Red Zone, and they think they're a lot of them they watch the Red Zone, they go on Twitter, and then they read the Monday Morning Quarterback, or they have a subscription to ESPN Plus or something. They're not doing deep dives into cornerback efficiencies. They're going to be hearing the hype around Jalen Carter. I mean, Ed made a good point about him being a rotational piece, but as much as the media love the Lions, they love the Eagles' defense. They keep drafting these guys from Georgia, and they hit every time, except Nakobe Dean. We won't talk about Nakobe Dean, but they draft out these guys from Georgia. They hit every time. And although I'm kind of actually I'm not really making the case for Jalen Carter here. I think he will win because he's at a position where his impact is much louder, much more noticeable.
Yeah, I mean, I know he is a rotational piece. I think most of the time he's playing 50 or 60% of their snaps. But when he does, he's dominant enough that I think it does a lot to alleviate the smaller sample size. Obviously, Witherspoon's playing a lot more than is far more versatile by virtue of his position, I think a case could be made that he's like already one of the like best interior pass rushers, in the league. Just in terms of the pressures that he's accruing, and like they're not translating into sacks like all the time, which I'm sure it'll come eventually. It's hard to not give him it.
Yeah, I think I agree as well, especially with like it always kind of sucks whenever a team that has like 14 primetime games in the season happens to also then have like offensive and defensive rookie of the year, and it's like, well, yeah, it's because like everybody's had the opportunity to watch Jalen Carter play every game, whereas like nobody's hunting out Seahawks games right now because like other than like Geno Smith believers, there's not really much reason to go out and hunt out their games, as opposed to like every primetime game is an Eagles game, it feels like, or like they're playing in the big spot in a bad window, it like what is to us like 9:25 kickoff. Yeah, I think Jalen Carter will win just purely off of exposure this time. Like, I think Dan Campbell was more of a narrative thing. I do think that Jalen Carter will be more of a, the voters will hear Jalen Carter announced a couple times and they'll see him have like a forced fumble and like a sack in a primetime game, and that'll just be them sold. Like, it's the same principle behind like why people still value Jadeveon Clowney as good, because he keeps doing good things in primetime games that everyone's watching, but he doesn't play well outside of it. But I'm not saying that Jalen Carter doesn't play well outside of it. I'm just saying that like people's exposure changes their evaluation. So I feel bad for going against Ed again, but it's Jalen Carter. Like it, I think it's a bit much layup.
A grudging selection of Jalen Carter there by all of us, really.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say, I reckon I think that Christian Gonzalez probably would have been right there if he hadn't got hurt.
Yeah.
But he did, and then he would have been stuck on a god awful team anyway. So who knows? But
yeah, it doesn't mean that like Witherspoon or somebody else can't make a late push, but yeah, Jalen Carter is the front runner, and I don't know whether or not it's that close with the voters. All right, moving on to the offensive side of the ball then. This feels like a layup as well, potentially. Does anyone have an argument other than CJ Stroud?
No.
Does anyone want to give a quick honourable mention to someone who isn't CJ Stroud, who we acknowledge isn't going to win it, but who has been good?
Yes.
I regard no players other than CJ Stroud in this category with honour.
I will give an honourable mention to somebody like a Zay Flowers, but that's really all.
Puka Nacua is like top 3 or 4 in the league in receptions.
Ah, shit, yeah.
Yeah, but like
it's not close.
It's not close.
But fair play to him. He's actually just bloody good, and he's kind of gone under the radar a lot on this Rams team. But with whoever the hell they've got, Johnny Depp. Oh, cancelled. Shit. Sorry, Johnny Russell.
Okay.
Do you mean John Walford?
No, yeah, that's the guy. Sorry, I was thinking John Russell. Johnny Russell. But move on.
Move on.
DJ.
Okay. Now I'm gonna move off of the rookies and move to another, like, it's almost entirely narrative driven. Comeback Player of the Year, which coming into the year felt like a layup that it was going to be DeMar Hamlin because of the whole thing, but DeMar Hamlin hasn't played a snap yet this year. So is it a comeback player if they don't play? Does anyone have a comeback player that is playing and is worthy of the award?
I refuse to go first, but there is one man.
I am a conscientious objector to this award.
Who was injured? I know Ed's thinking about Josh Dobbs, but he played last year.
Yeah, you can't.
On a moral ground, it annoys me when it's like a player who played last year and nothing really.
Yeah.
They were just not very good, and now they are.
Yeah.
No, it's not the case that he played, though. He was in the wilderness. He was
I-
lost to the dusts of, mediocrity. And then this year he rises statuesque like an
Yeah.
edifice.
Yeah, he almost reached 300 passing yards at the weekend. His career high.
The Titan.
I mean, it's true. His career high is less than that, but his career best 2 games have been the best last 2 weeks.
He played in the playoffs last year, didn't he?
Yeah, he played in the playoffs because Tannehill got injured. It was him or Malik Willis.
Oh, yeah, I guess. I don't know. I guess he would probably be the second choice, but it would be, in my mind, I'm not to denigrate his achievements. He has been a great story, but he just simply hasn't done it. Tua, maybe, because of the concussions last year. He didn't know how to hit his head on the ground successfully, but he seems to have learned how to do that now. And the Dolphins have a lot to prove down the stretch this year, but I think they probably will finish with 4 losses at most. So, and I think they'll probably set some offensive records along the way, because although the last time we saw them it was against that underwhelming performance against the Chiefs, I think, and we really ragged on them for losing those 3 games against actual contenders, but they are enough of a track meet type team that they'll put up some very gaudy numbers, and then it's possible. But in my heart of hearts, I still think it'll be, even if he doesn't play, I still think it'll be Damar Hamlin.
Yeah, it's no contest.
It's quite funny actually, because I remember
the second he plays a snap, I will get off the Dobbs train.
The funny thing is I actually funnily remember the 2019 one, and I seem to remember having a discussion with Ed where he was unanimously giving Alex Smith, who'd played terribly for the whole year, just because he'd had the leg injury and nearly died.
Yeah.
And then it's
as I recall,
that's
as I recall, my stance was actually that. Sorry. That's what I was going to say is, as I recall, my stance was that the trophy should actually be named after Alex Smith.
Yeah, but you did want to actually award him the award as well. But it's quite funny to now have you on the other end, just because it's a Vikings player that you're putting forward. But I'm actually agreeing with you in that if Geno Smith wins Comeback Player of the Year last year, despite playing the year before, and it not being any reason other than that he just came back from being shit, then I think that Josh Dobbs is an actual candidate, especially because he's another, everybody's fallen in love with the story of Josh Dobbs being exciting for a team that was basically desperate for somebody that wasn't Jaron Hall, was it?
Well, he did look decent when he played them, but he immediately
but then he immediately got hit.
Unsuccessfully wanged his head on the ground.
Yeah. So I think that the Josh Dobbs story
Phil
wins.
Rivers get a comeback
What?
Player of the Year award where he
Who?
just had 1 year. Phil Rivers.
Yeah. But he played a full season below average rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So the whole thing about he plays he played last year, Josh Dobbs played last year, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. The media wants what the media gets.
If you're trying to go 7 for 7 in correctly predicting the awards, and there's this narrative building, Damar Hamlin hasn't played a snap, the Bills will put him on the field for 1 snap and make a whole fucking scene out of it. So that was really cynical. I apologize. They'll make a great fucking scene out of it, and then he'll win the comeback player of the year. So yeah, I don't know. If we as a podcast are doing these awards, then yeah, I have no problem with that. The Dolphins, but it's going to be Hamlin.
Yeah.
I'm still putting it forward that I think it'll be Dobbs. I think that when you look at it, the circumstances of there's a guy who has been healthy to suit up but hasn't played until week 18, but they're just going to put him out for 3 special team snaps just so that he could potentially have an eligibility for being a player in the year. or the guy that was a media darling for the whole season. Like, I almost feel like Damar Hamlin has almost slightly been forgotten by the media cycle. Like, where Alex Smith coming back from the injury, it made sense because like Alex Smith was playing a lot and he was a quarterback and stuff. I really don't think that like I've seen much about Damar Hamlin other than that Bills Bengals game when they weirdly brought an ambulance out with Hamlin 3 on the back. That was very strange. But like outside of that, I don't think I've really seen anyone talking about that he's like back in the league because he's not playing. Like,
I think the ambulance was a Dale Earnhardt reference.
oh, was it? Okay, I did.
No,
I don't know enough about Dale Earnhardt.
Who are the Vikings playing next week, Ed?
Next week it is it the Broncos?
Okay, well, but as soon as they play a real team who aren't like in the NFC South or AFC South, and if Dobbs throws a couple picks and they lose, then it's like, oh, maybe. Whereas there's basically nothing Hamlin can do that is really going to affect his standings. You know, Dobbs could be affected by performance. Damar Hamlin could like miss a horrendous like easy tackle. Like, I can't even think of an example. The only example I can remember when Teddy Bridgewater got slated for not tackling someone on a pick return, and it was like, oh, he's lost the respect of the dressing room. Even if Hamlin did that exact same thing, he would still be in my mind a contender. But I respect the court's decision.
Yeah, just to move it
Let me-
along, I'm just
let
going
me
to put
just-
my foot down and just say it's Josh Dobbs. Like, I'm just moving this along.
Get fucked.
There was Viking slander, Tom, and I have to respond to it.
Don't let him. Move on.
But let's just move on. We can't sit here and let you defend every bit of Viking slander that comes your way, because we'll sit here till way beyond your hard out, and we'll never get to anywhere. So let's move on then to... I'm going to say we move on to Defensive Player of the Year. So there are quite a few candidates actually this year. Does anyone have an argument for who they think it should be? I'll let Max start actually. Yeah.
All right, I was going to go for. I didn't know what everyone else was going to go for, but I thought maybe one that I could make a decent case for would be Max Crosby. Because I think the Raiders at the moment are really. The Raiders are 5-5, right? They're in that weird AFC jumble mix, and they just overcame a very schlubby Jets team, which is just the magic slide on them. But I think Max Crosby has promoted himself this season as one of the league. He has joined that Parsons, Garrett, Watt conversation. He was knocking on the door the last couple of years, but this year he has just been dominant. And I think my prediction is kind of predicated on the idea that the Raiders will make it to like the 7th or the 6th seed as like a 9 and 8 team, mostly built off the strength of a defense, which would be spearheaded by Crosby. That's the vision in which I see this happening. And I think he is at that level, to his credit, where he can actually make that kind of difference. You know, I think we've seen TJ Watt do it for the Steelers, where the offense is not performing to that higher level, but he goes out and puts the team on his back, and single-handedly wins the game. And I think Crosby is at that level now where he could do it. And I think it would be a good story with the Raiders being quite literally rid of the evil of McDaniels and the whole Patriots organization.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Counterpoint from anyone for another name to add to the list of Crosby?
I mean, realistically, there aren't that many guys that you could really make a case for. I mean, there's the big 3 edge rushers, and I guess Crosby is just outside them in terms of numbers. Put them all in together. But apart from those guys, like, who else is there? You want to vote for, like, Geno Stone?
DeRon Bland.
not to be too much of a homer, but I would argue it's a top 5 pass rushers this year with Hunter as well. But my vote would be for Garrett, if I'm honest.
You want to put forward
Sorry,
your
Tom.
order? Yeah.
Yeah, we don't talk about the redacted for obvious reasons, but I went ahead and did some digging. When Myles Garrett is responsible for ending 1 in every 7 drives against the redacted, be that with a forced fumble, a run tackle on 3rd down, or a sort of sack that, on 3rd or 4th down, I think that kind of production out of one player means that there's only really one choice. The other players are incredible, don't get me wrong. Like, the tier of pass rushers that are there is otherworldly, but Garrett's on another level purely by production this year.
Okay. Anyone, Sam, who have you got putting your point forward?
I threw TJ Watt's hat into the ring on his behalf, purely so I didn't have to say redacted that much. There's a good enough chance that he can make up enough to get to where he needs to be for it. I don't know. Narratively, a lot of his, far more of his, big plays come in situations that mean massive changes for a game. But if the Steelers might not be, the Steelers are quite uninspiring, so I don't know whether that might kind of, fly
I would
away
say
in the dust.
the thing with TJ Watt is, I think by his standards, he's had a pretty underwhelming last 3 or 4 weeks. But the Steelers are about to play a lot of divisional games, which are usually close, with serious playoff implications down the stretch. And obviously, we know that what happens later in the season has a bigger weighting in the awards selection. So he is best placed potentially of the ones we've discussed to make a run. But I wouldn't have him in first place personally at the moment.
No, I'd actually be inclined to agree to not put him in first place at the moment. I think with it's tricky because what Garrett brings just from a pure rushing perspective, and Crosby does as well. I think that TJ Watt has done the other bits that I think will work in his favor narratively, like the pick against the Rams and the fumble recovered for a game-winning touchdown against that team. And it is a tricky one because I think that it's a guaranteed 1 and 2. It's just about how it goes from here, and both of them are still on a ridiculous pace. But I think it would look bad on myself as an overseer to be putting anyone above Myles Garrett right at this current moment in time, but I do think that it genuinely this is the closest of the awards between 2 candidates, because it's 1A 1B right now. It's so difficult to try and figure out what's going to happen in the stretch, because anything can happen. It goes mental, especially with you say with those divisional games in playoff bound AFC North. Crazy. But yeah, I will say Myles Garrett is Defensive Player of the Year for the Midseason Awards. So there you go. This is the only redacted representation that they will be having all year. But it's not bad representation to have.
Can I give an honourable mention before I move on, Tom?
If your honourable mention is Daniil Hunter, then you can have the
No,
name.
it's not. It's not.
Okay.
It's not. It's Dexter Lawrence. I can't believe Sam didn't say him. Dexter Lawrence, the best interior disruptor in the NFL right now.
The D-line has not been up to snuff especially the past 2 weeks. It's he's still very much up there, in terms of win rate and stuff. He's as dominant gets for a D lineman. But I think all of these awards are kind of a narrative award. and I think production would have to be like unconscionably high for a player on this Giants team to, do anything.
Yeah, for me, like, there's a reason why nobody brought him up is that his production would have to be leading the league in sacks to be anywhere near the conversation on the Giants right now, and that's just like how it is. Nobody's watching Giants games beyond the first like 3 plays because they aren't watchable. Sorry, Sam. So yeah. Anyway, let's move on because I'm conscious of we have about 10 minutes before the hard out. This has been a lot longer than I think I had expected.
Isn't it always?
It kind of is, yeah. So let's move on to the offensive side of the ball. Sam, you can go first, but I am going to put like a hard limit.
Oh, this is gonna be it's gonna be like a fucking bullet
Okay, shoot, son.
for offensive player of the year. Okay. McCaffrey, yeah, I think he's like such a league darling. I think there's a chance he could get up there with the yardage, and I think that the narrative's kind of there if they manage to get through to like at least the divisional or the championship game or something. Like, oh, he was wasted on a team that was garbage for ages, and now he's good on a good team. Here's some flowers.
All right, that's a good argument. Very very concise. Nice work. Although it was funny that you were like, "This is like a bullet," and then just trickled out of the gate. Famously, exactly what a bullet does not. Max, who is your offensive player of the year candidate? Go.
Can I, instead of naming a player, can I just suggest that the offensive player of the year will be the same as the MVP?
Oh, you can, and then you can put forward your MVP.
I will. I believe this player will win both.
Okay. And then Ed, who is your offensive player of the year? And don't say
I can
the
hear
name.
the derision in your voice.
Yeah, I know that you're about to say this name, and there are better candidates for this award, and you're not getting it. So either argue.
All
it
right, then
if
fine.
you
I'll
will.
keep quiet. I'm just gonna no. Let's just move on.
Oh,
CMC.
all right.
Oh,
I'm surprised that nobody said AJ Brown. I'm very surprised that
Yeah,
nobody
AJ
said
Brown.
AJ Brown.
Now that AJ Brown is on the table, my answer would be AJ Brown.
Yeah, I'm.
Howard.
I am
Stand
surprised.
up.
But rules is rules, and we only had an argument for one player, and it was CMC. So Christian McCaffrey is.
Ed was so vociferously defending Tyler Linderbaum in our chat.
Yeah,
Fine. Do you want me to fucking talk about it? Because Tyler Linderbaum would be
do
my
it. You have
selection.
a minute and a half. Go.
Okay. 2 penalties allowed, 0 sacks. The pivot on the best zone running team, the best power running team, one of the best pass blocking teams. They play a no huddle 40% of the time, which means he's calling protections. He in the center, he is buying Lamar Jackson enough time for Lamar Jackson to look like an MVP candidate. And, explosive runs in wide zone come because the center kicks out.
Cool.
The simple answer is Tyler Linderbaum.
Tyler Linderbaum is very good, but
If you can find me a single article come award season, like from a reputable site, that mentions Tyler Linderbaum once, I will buy you the most
or
luxurious-
any offensive lineman. Actually, I'll raise it all the way up.
Luxurious meat pie this country has to offer.
Okay, he's 10th in pass
reputable.
block win rate, and he's.
We don't have time for
18th
this.
in
Yeah,
run
we're not doing this. We're moving on. I'm sorry. We have our point now. Let's move on then to the crown jewel of the award ceremony, the stiff upper lip MVP prediction. Now, I can see 2 names that are the same, so I'm going to let both of you one by one come up with it, and then Max is going to offer a name that is also Offensive Player of the Year. So, Ed and Sam, who is it?
Should we say it together, Sam?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. CJ Stroud. Oh, MVP is the most narrative-driven award of them all.
Yes, he looks incredible. I appreciate that there hasn't been an MVP and like I don't think there's been a rookie MVP since like what, Jim Brown?
It's Jim Brown was the last one.
Yeah.
Yep.
But by God, he's been fantastic, and everyone like the quarterbacks have been close enough as a pack that it seems like the most rewarding name to put forward.
Get to the kid. Do you want us to do that again and call him Jim Redacted?
No, I'm not gonna say that. But fair play on getting a reasonable sounding pair of you saying something at the same time. This wouldn't have been possible pre-internet flubbage. So good job.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
Yeah, it would have been terrible. Max, who would be your MVP and Offensive Player of the Year candidate?
My prediction is simply Jalen Hurts. I think the Eagles I think Jalen Hurts is already probably one of the better quarterbacks in the league without really hitting full stride. I think people have been talking about the Eagles knowing that they've got another gear to go up. I mean, AJ Brown, if AJ Brown wins Offensive Player of the Year, Jalen Hurts is winning MVP. I just think the Eagles are primed to just destroy the remainder of their schedule, potentially finish as the number 1 seed in the NFC, and I think Hurts will be back to his best unless the injury slows him down, but I'm just going to go good faith and assume that it won't. I think it will be magnificent.
That's quite an interesting one to put forward, Jalen Hurts. But I especially like that you said that MVP and Offensive Player of the Year would be the same player, and then said that if AJ Brown wins Offensive Player of the Year, that Jalen Hurts would win MVP. So not the same player, but I do like it as an actual argument because like the Eagles are really good and they're in prime time a lot, and Jalen Hurts he's playing pretty well. Like he's not quite the level that he was previous, but like he's starting to ramp up and they're getting good production out of AJ Brown. But I think it's kind of hard to argue against CJ Stroud winning this very narrative award, like narrative driven award, especially the MVP, and like the story around the kid right now is as hot as it ever is, and I think especially with the last couple games that he's played, he is as good as he's been so far his entire career. He started out fairly hot. He had like that little dip, especially when playing the Bryce Young Panthers, weirdly enough, but he's gotten right back on it, and the fact that like he's just scalped Joe Burrow, and also that game against the Bucks last week, which is one of the most incredible displays that I think I've seen in like such a clutch moment. He's making all the throws, he's making the right reads, they're getting good production out of like everybody on the offense, and he's turning the rest of the team into stars. And this is a Texans team that ultimately was pretty naff coming into it. Nobody had hopes that they would win this many games and look this good and be this entertaining. And it's almost entirely because of CJ Stroud, and like obviously D'Amico Ryans is doing a great job, but I think it's going to be CJ Stroud, and that's where I think the MVP vote is going to go. So I'm going to say that the stiff upper lip Midseason award, obviously there's all production like yet to come, but Midseason, the Stiff Upper Lip podcast MVP is CJ Stroud. So that completes our reward sweep. Thank you.
You will look back on this and rue your recency bias. I promise you.
We probably will, but that's all that this podcast is good for, baby, because It's all about the narratives. Let's get the fuck out of here, because it is late. I know that we had 2 games, but we've been going for 55 minutes, and if I'm being honest, let's just wind us out. Sam, you're on mute. I can hear you. I can see you talking.
Oh, Jesus. Just watch the fucking games, you know?
Yeah, just watch them. Watch
Yes,
Lions Chargers.
He was great.
Watch Lions Chargers and Texans Bengals and make your own damn minds up. Because we're not doing it for you.
Yeah, if you've come to a podcast like this to get your scoop on Bengals Texans, God help you.
Yeah, fuck you, Belgium.
Yeah, we take pity on you.
Belgium!
Human level.
No, I sincerely though, thank you to Belgium and nearly exclusively Belgium.
Oh, yeah.
For proper.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
thanks,
Belgium.
thanks, Belgium.
They're like if Holland was good.
You are, yeah. I'm sure you'll take many wins from that.
Belgium kicks the shit out of Lindt chocolate anyway.
Yeah, fuck you, Dutchies.